Off the back of an incredible title fight in 2021, we were treated to another great year of racing in 2022. And I don't mean give 20th place 25 points, I mean give 10th place 25 points, with 9th getting 18, 8th getting 15, and so on and so on. This was an incredible title fight which went right down to the final lap in Abu Dhabi, with our contenders being separated by mere seconds on track, and so I highly recommend sticking around. Our season starts in Bahrain with a lot of unknowns. Ferrari were looking quick in testing, and Mercedes were not, and so as we went into race 1, we were in the dark. The timing board was not enjoying itself going into turn 1, and we had a great battle for the ages between our real title challengers Leclerc and Verstappen. But behind, the real championship was just getting started, as it was looking like Tsunoda would claim the maximum points. But then, both Red Bulls retired, meaning that Zhou Guanyu would secure his first point in F1 on debut and take a debut lead in our championship, with Alonso second and Tsunoda third. Magnussen would secure an amazing 5th place for Haas, meaning that he only got 8 points and Bottas was 6th for Alfa Romeo. They take first place thanks to their double points finish and sit 5 points ahead of Alpine going into the next race. As we travelled across Saudi Arabia to Jeddah, the fight at the front continued with some more great battles between Leclerc and Verstappen. Ocon almost killed his teammate on the main straight with a late defensive manoeuvre, and a Latifi crash led to a safety car. Then Alonso, Ricciardo and Bottas all retired within 2 laps of each other to wipe out a few potential challengers. It's still early doors, but you would bet on the Alpines to be the top contenders for this championship. But it ended with the top 2 being within a second at the line, and Lewis Hamilton taking max points in 10th. He had endured an awful weekend, getting knocked out in Q1 by Lance Stroll, but subsequently got the best result possible, with him taking the lead in the championship in front of Magnussen and Zhou. Mercedes go top in the constructors standings, with Alpine also jumping Alfa Romeo as they fall down to 3rd. In Australia, Sainz retired early on before Vettel crashed and Verstappen broke down. This left the midfield runners with a great chance to score good points, and Albon took it for Williams by running almost the entire race on the same set of tyres. Gasly would end up finishing in 9th with Bottas 8th, meaning they all close up to Hamilton, who could only score 6 points up in front. Ocon is just 2 behind thanks to his 7th place finish, and Gasly is 3rd thanks to his 8th and 9th place finishes in the last 2 races. Mercedes is still just ahead in the constructors, with Alpine 2 points behind them and Alfa Romeo a further 2 back. After 2021 gave us the pointless sprint races with only the top 3 scoring, 2022 revamped them, handing out points down to 8th, and so it's pretty easy to understand who gets max points in our championship. In the sprint, Magnussen claimed the first of these max points, with Bottas coming 7th and Ricciardo finishing 6th. This brings them ever closer to Hamilton on top and puts Alfa Romeo back ahead in the constructors. It was a wet start on Sunday, and into turn 1, Sainz was hit by Ricciardo and retired in the gravel, which also collected Bottas. Alonso also retired early on after his side pod blew off down the straight for his 2nd DNF of the season. This race had Leclerc's first high profile mistake of the year, as he spun at the final chicane and dropped down to 6th place, which promoted Bottas up to 5th. It ended with Stroll grabbing maximum points, with Magnussen 9th and Vettel 8th. Tsunoda got another points finish, and in the standings, Magnussen and Bottas jump Hamilton as he endured an awful weekend, being stuck behind Gasly in 14th for the whole race. Alfa Romeo stay on top, this time from Mercedes and then AlphaTauri, but the top 5 are all above 50 points after round 4. Round 5 saw the first running of the Miami Grand Prix, and safe to say, this was a boring one. But like all boring races, they always serve up something interesting in our standings. Stroll came from the pit lane to an impressive P10 as he claimed max points in this one after Alonso was bumped out of the top 10 due to penalties, with Albon 9th and Ocon 8th. Bottas lost out to both Mercedes and finished an important 7th, meaning he goes level with Magnussen on 52 points, with Stroll 3rd with 50 points and Ocon 4th with 49. Mercedes go back in front of Alfa Romeo by 1 point, at Alpine 3rd with 67. Spain was next, and for once, this race was actually interesting. Both Haas cars started in the top 10, but soon one of them was out of it as Magnussen tangled with Hamilton, pushing them both to the back of the grid. Then Sainz went into the gravel once again before Verstappen did the same thing. This let Leclerc build a massive lead out in front, before his Ferrari gave out. Verstappen and Russell battled, and in the end, Max claimed a massive victory for his own title challenge. But it ended with Tsunoda finishing in 10th, meaning he becomes the next driver to hit 52 points, and with Bottas scoring once again, he stays on top in the standings, with Ocon now 1 point behind thanks to his 7th place finish. Alpine are our new leaders, with Mercedes actually keeping up, and Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri not far behind. Monaco next, and after claiming pole and actually starting the race this year, Leclerc led up until the pit stops, where obviously Ferrari messed it up. He dropped from 1st and dominantly leading to 4th, and that was how it would finish. But do you remember who finished 10th in Monaco in 2022? That's right, you don't. It was Sebastian Vettel, because Esteban Ocon was given a penalty for being hit by Hamilton, dropping him out of the points, and with Bottas 9th and Lewis 8th, Valtteri goes 11 points clear of his old teammate, with Ocon still in 3rd. The top 3 in the constructors are also separated by just 8 points. In Baku, Ferrari fell apart, as with Sainz retiring on lap 9 and Leclerc following suit 11 laps later from the lead, this left the door open for an easy Red Bull 1-2 and the start of the end for the team in 2022. This also gave some free places to the midfield runners, and with that, Esteban Ocon took max points with the McLaren drivers in 9th and 8th and Alonso 7th once again. Hamilton would finish 4th, meaning he wouldn't get many points, and so Ocon jumps from 3rd to 1st in the standings and leads Bottas by 6 points. Alpine can finally start to build a lead out in front as they are ahead of Mercedes by 23 points as we move to Canada. Perez would lose his engine on lap 8 with Schumacher suffering the same fate 10 laps later. After starting on the front row, Alonso would fall down to 9th at the checkered flag with Stroll claiming another 10th place, and the Alfa Romeos having a strong weekend in 8th and 7th. Ocon would be just ahead of them in 6th, and so the lead doesn't change, but it gets a bit closer with Bottas being just 4 points behind. Alpine keep extending their lead out in front with them being 41 points ahead of Mercedes now, with Alfa Romeo right behind. Silverstone started off chaotic as Zhou Guanyu was flipped on his head thanks to George Russell closing the door on Gasly, and many others were affected at turn 1, including Ocon, who just about managed to get back to the pits on 3 wheels. There was some great racing in this one, including the infamous "through goes Hamilton" clip, but that only happened because of the safety car that Ocon caused by breaking down on the old pit straight. Bottas also retired on lap 21 thanks to a gearbox issue. This opened the door for one of our many challenges, and after a great restart and a maiden win for Carlos Sainz, Kevin Magnussen claimed max points with Vettel coming home in 9th and Schumacher recording his first points in 8th. Crucially though, Norris and Alonso scored, meaning it's all very close in the top 5. They're all separated by just 13 points, and Alpine now lead Aston Martin and then Mercedes by nearly 40 points. Austria was next, and it was time for another sprint. Alonso couldn't even start the race because his car had an electrics issue, and so crucial points went begging once again. Hamilton had nowhere to go in turn 1 as Gasly went flying because of his touch, but it was all good for him as he claimed maximum points in 8th with Magnussen 7th and Ocon 6th. Another points finish for Ocon means he is our first driver to break 100 points, with Hamilton now tied with Bottas in 2nd and Magnussen closing up even more now and breaking into the top 5. Alpine are now only 38 points ahead of Mercedes heading into the main race. We got a battle for the lead once again with Leclerc and Verstappen fighting it out, and as they scrap for the win, we got a massive result for our championship. After not starting the sprint, Alonso started at the back of the grid and came through to take maximum points in 10th. Ocon was a great 5th in real life, but this had big consequences here as a 17-point swing takes Fernando from 4th to 1st by just 1 point, with the Alpine pair the only ones to break 100 points. Magnussen came 8th, and so he moves up into 3rd, with Hamilton still there or thereabouts in 4th, and Norris 1 point further back in 5th. Alpine are now 61 points out in front thanks to that massive point swing, with McLaren moving up to 3rd. France saw Leclerc spin out of championship contention as he handed an easy win to Verstappen. After tangling with Tsunoda on lap 1, Ocon came home to finish 8th and outscore his teammate by 5 points, meaning he re-overtakes his rival in the championship. Norris also moves into 3rd as Stroll gets his 4th 10th place of the season to become the 4th driver to reach 100 points. Alpine keep scoring the big points and crucially with both of their drivers, and so they stay well clear of McLaren, who are now our 2nd place constructors. Hungary saw another shocking result out in front as even with Verstappen starting in 10th and then spinning 360 degrees halfway through this one, he still came home to win as Ferrari battled yet another strategy with Leclerc. But in our championship, our top 2 tangled heavily on lap 1, with Ocon almost putting Alonso in the wall into turn 1. Alonso flamed him on the radio, but can you blame him? He's just defending his lead in the mid-championship from his closest rival, which just so happens to be his teammate. But all's well that ends well as they both manage to finish in the points, with Ocon 9th and Alonso 8th. Don't count out Norris in 7th either as he keeps scoring, but for now, it's the Alpines well out in front as Ocon is now 7 points clear of Alonso, with Alpine 86 points ahead of 2nd place Aston Martin. After the summer break, we got another Verstappen masterclass as he went from 14th on the grid to 1st place in just 12 laps. But in our championship, we had some fireworks at Leclerc as Alonso started well before colliding with Hamilton, which retired the Brit and gave Fernando some damage. Ocon was mere meters from being collected by Latifi on lap 2 but narrowly escaped, although our old leader Bottas wasn't so lucky. This was a chaotic start, but it would fizzle out into a pretty boring one by race end. Ocon would make a lovely double move down the Kemmel Straight to score another points finish in 7th, with his teammate once again finishing in front of him. This means the gap has been extended again, with Ocon now 9 in front of Alonso. Alpine are now 91 points clear of 2nd, and the gap keeps growing with every race, as they will almost certainly win the Constructors' Championship. Verstappen wasn't going to let anyone take his crown on home soil, and so won the Dutch Grand Prix for the 2nd time in 2 years. But behind, Alonso came from 13th to 6th at the checkered flag, with Ocon outscoring him in 9th place. The gap is now 19 to 2nd place, and Norris secured another 7th to slightly stay in contention as Stroll moves up to 4th thanks to his 5th 10th place of the season. If the Aston was just a bit better and he could actually score consistently, Stroll would legitimately be a contender with all his 10th places. And you guessed it, Alpine extend their lead to 2nd to 94 points, and it's going to take a lot to beat the middest team in F1. In Monza, Albon was out with appendicitis, and so Nick de Vries finally got his chance in F1 and impressed, scoring a great 9th place for Williams. Alonso would retire halfway through the race thanks to a water pressure issue, and with Ricciardo retiring near the end of the race, the safety car would end the race, with Zhou claiming max points in front of 11th placed Ocon. So with that, our top 2 didn't score for the first time in forever, it seems like. And so this allowed 7th place Norris to close up, and he's now only 11 points off of Alonso in 2nd. Alpine and Aston Martin both didn't score, and so nothing has really changed in that respect. Singapore saw more rain at the start and a great win for Sergio Perez out in front as Verstappen struggled in the pack. Ocon started 17th in this one but retired in typical Alpine fashion on lap 26 with an engine issue. But the thing is, 5 laps earlier, Alonso also retired with the same issue, meaning it was another double DNF for our top 2 in the championship. The door was wide open, but with Norris driving a great race to 4th, he barely got any points, and so the top 2 keep their positions for now. Stroll finally finished in a position that wasn't 10th, and so he stays in 4th with Hamilton in 5th thanks to a 9th place finish. Alpine, even with their retirements, have built up a massive gap, and so Aston could only close it down by 25 points. In Japan, there was once again more rain, and this time it was much worse than Singapore. They did try to race at the start with a rare standing start in full wet conditions, but after Sainz lost it out of the hairpin, we were back to safety car and then red flag conditions. This wasn't before they brought some tractors onto the side of the track as they attempted to recreate what happened in 2014. As they waited for the rain to pass, it soon turned into a race against the clock with a timer popping up on the timing column, and this meant there was a risk of half points being awarded. Luckily for everyone though, we got full points. A few drivers gambled on Inters straight away on the restart, including the GOAT, Nicholas Latifi. He would end the race in 9th, finally getting some points on the board, and we got a great result for our championship. Alonso would finish 11 milliseconds behind Vettel on the line to come home 7th, with Ocon in 4th. But they never would have thought that Norris being in 10th place was so bad for them, as he took home the big points, which messes up everything. He goes from an outside challenger in this championship into a nailed-on contender, as he's now only 5 points behind Ocon and 8 in front of Alonso. It's probably going to be these 3 as we head into the final 4 races of the season, and highlights just how powerful getting a single 10th can be. The next race was Austin, and in this one, Russell T-boned Sainz at turn 1, which would retire him from the race, and halfway through it, we got more action from our title contenders. Stroll was driving a great race, but then moved late on Alonso, causing him to hit him, retire Lance from the race, and send Fernando airborne. This somehow didn't retire Alonso, and so he would then come back to finish an impressive 7th. Ocon would start in the pit lane, but came through to only 11th place, meaning that Norris, thanks to his 6th place, takes the lead in the championship for the first time by 5 points. Alonso is now only 1 behind Esteban as well, heading into Mexico, so this could very well go to the final race. As with most Mexican Grand Prix, it was pretty dull, but as I said earlier, this means it was great for our championship. Well, Bottas would score 10th place, but just a few months too late for his once good looking title challenge. But in front of him, more shocks. On lap 62, Alonso was running a great 9th place, with Ocon getting overtaken in front of him. Then, just a few laps later, his Alpine broke down in another mechanical failure, robbing him of what would have been a great result. This meant both Norris and Ocon scored as Fernando didn't, and the gap is now 8 from Lando to Esteban, with Alonso 16 further back. He's not out of it, but that was a big result that went begging, and you can see how frustrated he was at losing out in the mid-championship. We haven't checked back on the constructors in a few races, but even in their tough period, Alpine are still keeping a near 100-point gap to 2nd, with Aston and McLaren changing hands for that 2nd spot. The final sprint of the year was in Interlagos, and with Magnussen incredibly on pole, he would get a good start before eventually finishing in 8th, grabbing max points. Ocon once again got very close with his teammate and somehow didn't retire both of them, but Alonso would lose his front wing on the main straight, ruling him out of a much needed result. But crucially, Norris finished 7th, meaning he goes 15 points clear of Ocon going into the main race. In this one, the Mercedes dominated out in front, with Russell claiming his first win in F1. On lap 7, Norris tagged Leclerc and retired him, before he pulled over on lap 52 with a gearbox issue. You couldn't write it. With the door wide open for our challengers behind, Alonso finished an impressive 5th, and Ocon got 15 points in 8th. Remember how he was 15 points behind Norris after the sprint? Well, now they're level with Alonso 23 points back and an incredible finale on the cards in Abu Dhabi. As the top two are level, they just need to outscore each other in order to win the championship. But although Fernando is quite far back, he's still mathematically in it. But he would need to outscore the pair of them by 24 points to win the title. Basically, he needs to finish 10th and the other two need to not score. Got it? Good. As we travel to the Middle East for the final time, our challengers qualified in the following order: Lando Norris in 7th, Esteban Ocon in 8th, and Fernando Alonso in 11th. Bring on the final race of this incredible season. Everyone kept it clean on lap 1, and after the order had settled down on lap 4, Norris was 6th, Ocon was 8th, and Alonso was 10th. After having an early scrap with Vettel for the low points positions and making a great double move on lap 23, Alonso would retire halfway through the race with a water leak issue. It was going to be a miracle for him to win the title, but with his reliability being awful all year, did he even stand a chance, especially with him leaving the team for Aston Martin? But anyways, the show goes on, with Ocon and Norris staying close to each other all race long. With 13 laps to go, Norris was ahead of Ocon in 7th, but crucially got the fastest lap, adding another point to his total. But as the final laps came and went, Ocon still stayed behind Norris, finishing just 1.2 seconds behind him at the line, meaning that at the conclusion of our championship, Esteban Ocon is our winner by 1 point to Lando Norris. His fastest lap wasn't enough to keep the gap down, and maybe Ocon was thinking about the real championship in his head as he finished this race. A brilliant end to a brilliant year, with Alpine securing the title as the middest team and Ocon achieving the title of mid-world champion. As we look at the full standings, Stroll and Vettel secured 4th and 5th place as Aston Martin started the year as the worst team, even behind Williams, and ended it as a solid and kind of consistent point scorer, with Stroll grabbing 6th, 10th place finishes across the year. And as we go down to the bottom of the standings, everyone who raced this year scored points, with Latifi and De Vries getting the least out of everyone. So that was a great year for the reverse point system, as most of them are. But do you know which one was even better? The 2023 edition, and that video is on screen right now for you to check out.